My name's Layla. I'm 32, and I still can't believe my own cousin looked me in the eye and asked me to cater her entire wedding for free. She said, "It'll be great exposure for your business." Like that would pay my rent. That moment changed everything for me, not just how I saw her, but how I saw myself. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about family, betrayal, and emotional courage. When I first opened my eyes that morning, I didn't expect the day to twist my stomach into knots. The sun hadn't even risen yet, and my phone was already buzzing on the nightstand. It was my cousin Kayla, the one who hadn't called in months. I squinted at the screen, saw her name, and sighed. Kayla was the kind of person who always wanted something. The kind who'd wrap her requests in sweet words, but somehow leave you feeling guilty if you said no. Still half asleep, I answered, my voice rough. "Hey, Kayla, what's up?" Her tone was bright and sugary, the kind she used when she needed a favor. "Oh, my gosh, Layla. I was hoping you'd pick up. I have the best idea for you." That word, idea, should have been my warning. She went on without taking a breath. "So, as you know, my wedding's coming up in June, and I was thinking, since you're trying to get your catering business off the ground, why not cater my wedding? It'll be amazing exposure for you." I froze. My mind scrambled for the right words. "You mean cater your whole wedding? For free?" She laughed, that nervous, fake little laugh I'd heard 100 times family gatherings. "Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. There'll be at least 100 guests, all potential customers. You'll get so much attention. You can even hand out your business cards. Exposure. That word hit like a stone. People always used it when they didn't want to pay. I rubbed my temple. "Kayla, that's a huge job. The food, the prep, the setup, it's just me right now. I can't." "Layla, come on," she interrupted, her tone turning sharp beneath the sweetness. "You know how much family means to me. I'd do it myself if I could cook like you. Plus, everyone will see your work. Isn't that what you want?" She said it like she was offering me gold. I didn't answer right away. I stared out the window of my tiny kitchen apartment, the same one I used as my workspace. My oven was secondhand, the counters chipped, but it was mine. I'd been working 2 part-time jobs just to afford ingredients and small catering gigs on weekends. Her words echoed, "Isn't that what you want?" Of course, I wanted exposure, but I also wanted respect. And something about Kayla's tone told me she wasn't offering either. Still, I hesitated. Maybe she was right. Maybe this could help. "Let me think about it," I said softly. Kayla pounced on the pause. "Perfect. I'll send you the guest list later." "Okay. Oh, and we'll need appetizers, dinner, and dessert. You're a lifesaver." The line went dead before I could even breathe out my weight. The following days were chaos. My mom called the next morning, her voice full of pride. "I heard you're catering Kayla's wedding. That's so generous of you, sweetheart." I blinked. "Mom, she didn't even—" "Oh, honey, she told everyone already. Said you offered to do it out of love. Isn't that sweet? You've always had such a big heart." My heart sank. I hadn't offered anything. That evening, my aunt, Kayla's mom, called too. "Layla, thank you for helping our girl. You're doing such a kind thing. You'll get so many new clients after this. Trust me." The trap was closing, and I could feel it. Still, I convinced myself to see the good side. Maybe it really would be worth it. I tried to picture the smiling guests tasting my food, asking for my card, complimenting my work. Maybe Kayla would post photos and tag me online. Maybe I'd finally get those calls I'd been waiting for. So I said yes. It was a quiet yes, one I whispered more to myself than to her. The next week, Kayla texted me her menu ideas. I opened the message, and nearly dropped my phone. She wanted 6 appetizers, 2 main courses, dessert options, and drinks, all homemade, with that rustic charm you do so well. She even included fancy dishes she'd seen online, like crab-stuffed mushrooms and mini beef Wellingtons. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I'd cry. I texted back, "Kayla, this is a big menu for one person. Can we scale it down a bit?" She replied within seconds, "Oh, Layla, don't stress. You'll figure it out. You always do. This will be so good for your business. Everyone will talk about it." That sentence haunted me. Everyone will talk about it. The weeks leading up to the wedding were exhausting. I barely slept. I spent every penny I had on ingredients and rentals. My kitchen smelled of garlic butter and coffee, a mix of exhaustion and desperation. There were days I'd burn my hands, rush between trays, and glance at the calendar, counting down. I imagined Kayla smiling, walking down the aisle, surrounded by perfect decorations and perfect people, all eating food I'd made with my unpaid hands. Still, a small part of me hoped she'd surprise me, maybe offer something in return, or even thank me sincerely. But every call from her was the same. "Hey, make sure you use those gold trays I showed you. Oh, and don't forget, we're gluten-free now, remember? And Layla, can you add one vegan option? My coworker's girlfriend doesn't eat meat." Each time, her tone carried less gratitude, more expectation. Like I was her employee. 2 nights before the wedding, I was in my kitchen frosting cupcakes when my mom stopped by. She looked around at the mess, flour dust on the counters, trays stacked to the ceiling. "Layla," she said softly, "you sure you can handle all this?" I nodded, but my voice cracked when I spoke. I said yes. I have to finish it. She placed her hand on my shoulder. "Sweetheart, you've always been the one who gives the most. Just make sure they're not taking too much." I smiled weakly. It's family, Mom. They wouldn't do that. But even as I said it, my chest tightened. The day before the wedding, Kayla texted again. "Hey, just a reminder. Please wear something simple. We don't want the caterers standing out too much." The caterers. That word hit me harder than I expected. I stared at it for a long time. She didn't say Layla. She didn't say my cousin. Just the caterers. That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by labeled containers and prep lists. My body ached, my eyes burned, and my back throbbed. I whispered to myself, "You're doing this for your dream." But deep down, I knew something was off. I just didn't know how bad it would get. On the morning of the wedding, I loaded my car before sunrise. The trays were warm and heavy. I wrapped everything carefully in foil and blankets to keep it from cooling too soon. As I pulled up to the venue, a fancy barn-style event space outside town, I felt small. The parking lot was filled with SUVs and luxury cars. My old Honda looked like it didn't belong there. When I found Kayla, she was surrounded by bridesmaids, laughing. Her white dress shimmered under the morning light. She looked perfect. "Layla," she squealed, air-kissing me. "Oh, my gosh, you made it." "The setup area's in the back, by the service door. You'll see it." I forced a smile. "Got it." She didn't even look at the trays. As I unloaded everything, the venue manager approached me. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you with Sunset Catering?" I blinked. "No, I'm with myself. Layla's Kitchen." He looked confused. "Oh, well, the main catering team's already here. They're setting up the buffet tables." My stomach dropped. "Main catering team?" He nodded and pointed inside. And that's when I saw them. 3 uniformed staff members unloading silver chafing dishes and polished serving trays. I stood frozen, holding my own tray of roasted chicken, watching as they filled the same tables I was supposed to. My phone buzzed. A text from Kayla. "Hey, just combine your stuff with theirs." It'll all look amazing together. Thanks again. You're the best. My throat tightened. Combine my stuff with a professional team. She actually paid. That's when it hit me. This wasn't exposure. It was exploitation, disguised as family love. I walked outside for air, the sound of laughter echoing behind me. The sun was blinding, but all I felt was cold. I had done everything right, every dish, every flavor, every detail, for free. And now, I was just the extra help. That night, as I drove home, my car smelled like garlic and heartbreak. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. The favor that was supposed to help my dream had turned into a trap I'd built myself. And though I didn't know it then, that betrayal would become the fire that finally taught me how to stand up for myself. And though I didn't know it then, that betrayal would become the fire that finally taught me how to stand up for myself. The ceremony wrapped early. The string quartet played a gentle tune, and the couple's vows sounded like something out of a movie. People wiped tears. Cameras flashed. I watched Kayla and her husband drift toward the reception tent, laughing hand in hand. For a moment, the world looked soft and warm, the kind of warmth I had wanted to help create with every meal I'd prepared. Then I turned toward the catering area and reality hit again. My station sat behind the service door, where only staff and a few forgetful uncles ever wandered. It was narrow. Bare bulbs swung above to give the space a jaundiced, workaday light. Tables were crowded with trays, steam rising in thin ribbons. The air smelled like rosemary and butter, and somewhere under it all, the sharp tang of burnt sugar from a tray that should have been monitored more closely. The paid team had set a wide buffet in the main tent. Their crisp uniforms glinted. Their platters were iced and polished. They moved with a calm that comes from numbers and money. There were 4 of them, 2 men and 2 women, and they never stopped, even when guests swarmed the tables. The guests lined up politely, plates in hand, but it felt like watching a movie where you knew the ending already. My food went unnoticed by most because I was not in the right place to be noticed. I had 3 stations: appetizers, the main course, and desserts. Each one needed attention and timing. I changed pans, flipped through orders, and tried to keep my voice steady when the venue manager asked if I needed anything. He was efficient, but distracted, the type who runs 1,000 events a year and measures everything in checklists. "Can I get you anything else?" he asked, peering at my setup. "A little more ice for the cooler," I said, wiping my palms on a towel. "And maybe an extra sternos for the chafing dishes. These seem underpowered." He nodded and walked off. I wiped my face and kept moving. My hands moved on automatic, the way muscle memory takes over when you're too tired to think. I plated deviled eggs in neat spirals, arranged bacon-wrapped dates, and set steamed green beans in small, warm bowls. Each plate was made to be eaten and remembered. That's what hurt most. Each dish seemed to carry my intent and story. I used the garlic from my own jar, the eggs from the farmer down the road, the jam my neighbor made last summer. There was history in the seasoning. But no one came to ask whose hands had made this food. When the first guests reached my corner, some smiled when they tasted the deviled eggs or the cinnamon in the apple tart. One older man, a stranger with kind eyes, looked up at me and said, "Who made this? Pass my compliments." I felt my chest lift, a small, shining moment. "Thank you. I managed." I told him my name, and he asked where I was based. I handed him a small business card I'd printed weeks ago in hopeful anticipation. He folded it into his wallet like a treasure. For a second, I thought maybe this was how it would begin. Someone noticing and spreading the word. Then I watched him walk away and get drawn into the flow toward the main buffet. People smiled, they ate, and then they moved on. The polished team at the main tent had their own server with a tray of miniature portions that looked expensive. They were getting approached, praised, and tipped. My card stayed in the older man's pocket, briefly acknowledged but quickly forgotten. Around mid-reception, a bridesmaid hustled over in a daze. Her lipstick was smudged slightly at the corner from all the hugging. "Layla," she said, and for a flicker I thought she'd recognize me. She took in my station and glanced at the labeled trays. "Wow, these look great. Did you do all of this?" "Yes," I said, grateful for the human recognition. "I made everything here." Her face closed, polite but guarded. "Oh, that's nice." She leaned closer as if afraid of being overheard. "Kayla told me the other caterers were handling the main course. I didn't know you were helping with that. Sorry, we've just been running around." Her apology sounded like a quick brush-off, and then she was gone, whisked away by bridesmaids in sequins. I pressed my jaw shut and kept working because the plates needed to be replenished, and the guests didn't care about the neatness of my feelings. A small, messy thing happened then. One of my chafers tilted when a server bumped the table. A little gravy slopped over the side and pooled on the tablecloth. I moved faster than I thought I could and caught the tray before it fell. Still, the spill splashed across a stack of my dessert plates. I tried to clean it up quietly, but a child at a nearby table squealed when he saw the mess, and a woman nearby stood up and pointed, clearly annoyed. "You'd think they'd hire someone decent," she hissed loud enough for a nearby cluster to hear. The word "they" stung because it felt like everyone meant Kayla, and it felt like they meant me when they complained about the taste or the decor. My cheeks flamed with anger and shame at once. I did not want pity, but I did want to be treated fairly. At one point, I found Kayla near the entrance, smiling and handing out favors to guests. Her groom was by her side, laughing with his college buddies. I tried to walk over and catch her eye. I wanted to say something small, maybe a soft thanks or an offer to help carry anything heavy. As I approached, she spotted a cousin on the lawn and veered away. Her smile changed to full-on brightness, and she floated toward that cousin like a magnet. She did not see me. The hurt kept happening in the small ways. She introduced the paid caterer during a toast with effusive praise for the food and service. She used every word but mine. I stood near the back, clutching a rag and trembling slightly, and listened as people cheered and clinked glasses. They didn't see me behind the curtain. They saw whatever story she wanted them to see. At dinner, an aunt came by and asked if I had any more of the peach tarts. I nodded and gave her a plate, proud at being able to offer something she loved. She took a bite and closed her eyes in pleasure. "These are delicious," she said softly. "Who made them?" I answered, and I could see her brain register, and then file the information away without much thought. She patted my shoulder and moved on to a conversation about bridesmaid dresses. During the lull, when guests were transitioning to dancing, a man I recognized as Kayla's college friend asked me bluntly, "Are you a volunteer or hired?" His tone implied that the two were very different. I swallowed and explained, careful to keep my voice steady. "I'm doing this as a favor. I own a small catering service." He raised his eyebrows. "Oh, well, I suppose wedding food, like this, isn't professional, unless it's plated by professionals." He walked off, leaving a sour taste in my mouth that had nothing to do with the food. It was humiliating in a way that was hard to name. People were tasting my work and assigning it a value that was not mine to determine. They judged presentation by the surroundings and demeanor rather than the flavors. I felt invisible and present all at once, visible when praise briefly landed, invisible when the broader story was told without me. Around 9, a slow song began. People moved onto the dance floor in groups. Couples twirled. Laughter bloomed. I took a breath and went to refill a chafing dish. My knee brushed against a chair leg, and I stumbled. A tray slipped. Hot food scattered onto the floor, scattering into little tragic puddles of sauce and steam. Time seemed to slow. I grabbed napkins, cleaned what I could, and flushed with embarrassment as 3 servers from the paid team hurried over, efficient and corporate, to help. One of them offered a polite nod and a dry, "Are you all right?" as if I were a cramped old lady who'd overreached. I was not all right. My hands shook, and my chest felt like it had been pressed by a heavy pan. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell everyone that those plates on my table were mine, that I'd cooked them for hours, that I'd paid for more than I could afford to make the food taste the way it did. But the words stuck in my throat like too dry bread. As the night wound down, the crowd thinned. People came back for seconds, then thirds. The paid staff continued their practice movements, an assembly line of professionalism. I kept picking at the leftovers and watching as unused food was boxed and carried away, not by me, but by the paid staff who would wrap it and take it to a catered cooler. I thought of the bills stacked on my kitchen table back home, of the gas line on my van, the phone calls from suppliers asking for payment. All of that looked ludicrous next to the glittering, polished evening I'd tried to help create. At one point, a woman in a silk dress looked at me directly and said, "You must be exhausted." It was the only time someone acknowledged how hard I'd worked. I nodded. Her eyes flickered to the name on my card, then away. "That was very kind of you," she murmured. Her voice held pity, and pity feels like a soft, heavy blanket, comforting until you realize it is not respect. When the last song played and the DJ dimmed the lights, Kayla came over to the edge of the tent, surrounded by her inner circle. I thought she might offer a final word of gratitude to everyone who had helped. She raised her glass and thanked her parents, the florist, the DJ, the dressmaker, and then she paused. "And our wonderful caterers. Thank you for making this such a beautiful night." The crowd applauded. My hands were busy rolling silverware into napkins. I let the applause wash over me like distant rain. My mother later told me she'd stood near the back and tried to find a moment to say something to Kayla about me. She said Kayla was busy with photos and calls, and she never seemed to catch her eye. My mother's voice was soft as she told me this. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You did something kind." Her words were balm and salt. I told her thanks, and we hugged. But that night, the ache in my chest morphed into a new feeling, a quiet, flaring resolve that stung in the most honest part of me. I could not hold Kayla accountable in that moment. She was in the bright center of her dream. But I could hold myself accountable for how I would respond next. I left the venue with empty boxes and heavy feet. My car smelled of candles and leftover rosemary. My hands were sticky with sauce. I drove home slower than usual, taking every stop sign like a small mercy. The town stretched out under moonlight, familiar and indifferent. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment with my forehead against the steering wheel. I felt smaller than the space around me, and yet something deep inside had shifted. I knew then that the humiliation would not become my identity. It would become the place I started from. The night after the wedding, I sat in my car outside my small apartment, the streetlight flickering against the windshield. The leftover trays of food from the reception were stacked in the back seat, mac and cheese, roasted chicken, and lemon tarts I'd made with the last of my savings. The air smelled faintly of garlic and defeat. My hands were still sore from the hours of chopping, stirring, plating. And yet, the thing that hurt most wasn't physical. It was the silence. No thank you, no acknowledgement, not even a plate saved for me. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The laughter from the wedding still echoed faintly in my ears. Everyone had left smiling, holding plates of food I'd cooked, and Kayla, the bride I'd once admired like a sister, had been too busy taking pictures to even look my way. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilling down. "You did all that for nothing, Layla," I whispered to myself. The exhaustion hit me all at once. My body wanted sleep, but my mind kept replaying every moment of the day like a cruel loop. Her words kept ringing. "It'll be great exposure for your business." Exposure. That word had begun to feel poisonous. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Not with new clients or opportunities like I'd secretly hoped, but with messages from family. My aunt had sent a long text about how beautiful the wedding was and how everyone appreciated the food. She ended it with, "You should be proud, honey." That was such a lovely gesture of support. Proud. I stared at the screen in disbelief. A gesture of support? I had nearly gone broke for Kayla's big day, and they were acting like I'd done charity work. Then came a message from Kayla herself. It wasn't a thank you or even a check-in. It was short and casual, like nothing was wrong. "Hey, Layla, everyone loved the food yesterday. I'll tag you when I post the photos later. That should help your page get some attention." My stomach turned. No offer to pay me back for the ingredients. No acknowledgement of the promise she'd made about covering costs. Just a tag. I typed out 3 different replies and deleted each one. Finally, I just put the phone down. For the first time in years, I didn't want to be polite. 2 days passed before I saw the wedding photos online. The post had hundreds of likes, and sure enough, Kayla had tagged me under a photo where she was holding a glass of champagne and smiling beside the other caterer she'd hired. The caption read, "Forever grateful to everyone who made our day magical. Shout out to the amazing caterers for the incredible food." Plural, caterers. Not once did she mention that I had prepared the majority of it. The comments were full of people praising the official company for their delicious work. No one even seemed to notice my name buried at the bottom of the tags. It felt like someone had erased me from my own effort. A few days later, I decided to call Kayla. I told myself I'd stay calm. I just needed to clear things up, to make sure I'd at least get reimbursed for the supplies I'd bought. When she answered, her voice was sweet, almost rehearsed. "Layla, oh my gosh, didn't everything turn out perfect?" I paused for a moment, trying to choose my words carefully. "It did. But Kayla, we need to talk about the costs. I spent nearly all my savings on ingredients and rentals. I thought you were going to—" She interrupted before I could finish. "Oh, Layla, come on. You didn't really think I'd pay for that, did you? It was for exposure. You can't put a price on opportunity." I was silent for a second. My hand trembled slightly as I held the phone. "Exposure doesn't pay for groceries," I said quietly. "You promised to at least cover the basics." There was a short laugh on the other end. "You're being dramatic. Everyone loved your food. That kind of attention is priceless. Maybe next time you'll get a real gig out of it." That word again, next time. Like I was a child who didn't understand how life worked. "Kayla," I said, my voice shaking now, "you made me believe this would help my business. I trusted you." She sighed. "Layla, don't guilt-trip me on my honeymoon week, okay? It's bad energy. Just enjoy the attention." And with that, she hung up. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not in anger, at least not yet, but in disbelief. I had spent weeks building something that was supposed to make me proud, and instead it made me feel small. Over the next few days, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw trays of food, guests smiling, and Kayla's dismissive grin. When my mother called, she tried to convince me to let it go. She's family, Layla. Don't hold grudges over money, she said. You'll get your blessing in other ways. But I couldn't let it go. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect, about dignity. A week later, the bills started piling up. I'd maxed out my credit card for that event, rented equipment, bought ingredients in bulk, even hired 2 helpers I couldn't afford. Now, with no payments coming in, I was struggling to pay rent. I called Kayla again, this time leaving a voicemail. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just said, "You don't realize what you took from me. And one day, you'll see what exposure really costs." I didn't expect her to respond. And she didn't. That same evening, I decided to visit the diner where I used to work before they'd laid me off. The owner, Mr. Collins, had always been kind to me. Maybe, I thought, he'd let me pick up a few shifts again. When I walked in, the familiar scent of coffee and fried onions wrapped around me like a memory. He looked up from behind the counter. "Layla, been a while," he said with a smile. I explained my situation, trying not to sound desperate. "Just part-time. Anything?" I said. He hesitated. "I wish I could, kid. We're fully staffed right now. But I'll keep you in mind." The disappointment stung, but I managed a nod. "Thanks anyway." As I turned to leave, one of my old coworkers whispered softly, "Sorry about your cousin's wedding. Everyone's been talking about it." I froze. Talking about it. She looked awkward. "Yeah, someone said you offered to work for free just to get attention for your business. That you kind of begged for the chance." My heart dropped. "That's not true," I said immediately. She gave me a sympathetic look. "I know, but people talk, you know?" That night, when I got home, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the cracked tile floor. My reputation, my only real asset, was slipping through my fingers, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I opened my laptop and scrolled through social media. More wedding photos, more tags, more people praising Kayla's event team. My name was invisible. I clicked on my own business page, Layla's Kitchen. The post I'd made about catering my cousin's wedding had gotten only 3 likes. One from my mom, one from Maya, and one from an old classmate I barely remembered. That's when I saw a new comment under the post. It read, "Didn't you say you were paid for that? Why are you posting like it was charity?" I stared at the comment for a long time. My hand hovered over the delete button, but I stopped myself. Let it stay. Let people see the truth, even if it made me uncomfortable. The next morning, I woke up to find that Kayla had blocked me on social media. Completely gone. The tag she'd promised to help me with had vanished too. She'd replaced my name with the catering company's. I couldn't believe it. It felt personal now. She hadn't just ignored me, she had erased me. I went to the pantry and found it almost empty. Flour, sugar, and a few spices were all I had left. Even the fridge was mostly bare. I'd poured everything into that wedding, and now I couldn't even afford groceries. That afternoon, Maya stopped by unannounced. She looked at me with concern the second she walked in. "Layla, what's going on? You haven't been answering my calls." I forced a smile. "I've been tired." She looked around, noticing the empty shelves. "Didn't she at least pay you back?" I shook my head. She said it was for exposure. Maya frowned, setting her purse on the counter. "Exposure doesn't pay rent." "I know," I said softly, "but apparently it buys you gossip." She sighed. "You deserve better than this. You worked yourself to the bone for her." Her kindness made something inside me ache. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. Over the next few weeks, I tried to rebuild. I baked small orders for neighbors, made sandwiches for local events, anything to earn a little money. But the calls I'd once gotten from friends of friends, people who used to ask for catering quotes, stopped coming. One night, as I sat scrolling through my phone, I saw Kayla's honeymoon photos pop up on my feed. White sand, tropical drinks, perfect smiles. I couldn't stop staring at them. The unfairness of it all tightened my chest until I had to close the app. That was the night I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep waiting for someone to save me or apologize. The breaking point wasn't just about anger anymore. It was about survival. 2 days later, my oven broke. It was the one my dad had bought me when I first started cooking. I stared at the lifeless machine, its faint smell of burnt wiring filling the air. That oven had seen everything. My first batch of cookies, my first paid order, and now my lowest moment. I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, tears streaming down my face. That's when Maya called again. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said I needed to. When I told her about the oven, she was quiet for a moment, then said, "Layla, maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's the story." I frowned. "What story?" "Yours," she said. "You've been through something people need to hear about. You're not the only one who's been used under the excuse of exposure. Maybe it's time you tell your side." I didn't answer right away, but her words stuck in my mind long after we hung up. I wasn't sure what I'd do next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. When I finally hit upload, my heart pounded so loud I could almost hear it echo in the silent room. The truth, my truth, was out there now. Every detail, every injustice, every betrayal was exposed in that video. I thought it would bring me relief, maybe even redemption. But within minutes, as the notifications started flooding in, I realized something was terribly wrong. The video was spreading faster than I imagined, but not in the way I had hoped. People weren't listening, they were judging, twisting, mocking, taking sides without even understanding what really happened. I sat frozen, staring at the screen as the view count climbed. The comments section was a battlefield. Some defended me, but others, so many others, called me things I'd never imagined hearing about myself. Attention seeker, making drama for sympathy, fake tears for likes. Each comment felt like a slap, a sharp sting that left a bruise deeper than words could describe. My chest tightened. The truth I thought would free me had turned into a weapon, aimed right at me. I tried to breathe, but my body refused to cooperate. I grabbed my phone, thinking I could explain, control the narrative somehow. But my messages were already flooded, some with concern, others with hatred. Even people I hadn't spoken to in years were sending me links to my own downfall. Then came the call. "Have you seen what you've done?" My friend Nadia's voice trembled between anger and worry. "You didn't think this through. You should have talked to me before posting that." "I had to," I said weakly. "They needed to know what really happened." "But you just made it worse," she snapped. "You named people, you showed receipts. Do you realize what that means legally? They can sue you, Maya." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. My throat went dry. I hadn't thought about that. I'd been so consumed by anger and pain that I didn't stop to think about consequences. The sound of my phone buzzing nonstop filled the room again. Messages, mentions, tags, hundreds of them. I opened one notification at random, and my stomach dropped. Someone had taken a screenshot of my post and twisted it into a meme. They were laughing at me. That night, sleep never came. I kept refreshing the screen, hoping things would calm down, but it only got worse. Influencers picked up my story, dissecting it like it was entertainment. A few even used it as content, their exaggerated reactions racking up views, while my life unraveled in real time. By morning, my hands shook as I scrolled through the news feed. There it was, my name in bold letters. Viral scandal. Woman exposes secrets, faces backlash. My picture was everywhere. Strangers debated my motives like I was a character in a soap opera. My mother called, just before noon. Her voice was soft, trembling with exhaustion. Beta, what is this people are saying about you? I couldn't answer. My throat closed up. I just listened to her silence, disappointed, worried, broken. Maya, why didn't you come to me first? She whispered. Why did you have to put everything online? Because no one believed me when I said it in private. I wanted to scream. Because every time I tried to explain, they said I was overreacting. Because silence had become a slow poison, and I wanted to live again. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I just said, I'm sorry, Amy. She sighed, the kind of sigh that carried years of unspoken pain. You're strong, Maya, but the world is not kind. Be careful. After hanging up, I sat by the window, watching the city move on like nothing had happened. People walked their dogs, bought coffee, went to work, while my entire world was collapsing quietly behind a glowing screen. Then came a knock on the door. It was Rayhan, the last person I expected to see. He looked furious, his jaw clenched so tight I could hear the crack of tension in the air. What were you thinking? He demanded. I took a step back. I just told the truth. You told your version. He shot back. You had no right to drag my name into this. I clenched my fists. No right? You humiliated me publicly. You lied. And now you're playing the victim? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged lion. Do you even know what you've done? You've ruined reputations. Mine, my family's. My sister can't even show her face at work. Something inside me cracked. And what about what you did to me, Rayhan? What about the sleepless nights, the manipulation, the gaslighting? You broke me, and when I finally stood up, you call it ruin? He looked at me, then really looked, his anger softening into something else. Fear, maybe. You don't understand. This is going to spiral out of control. There are people involved you shouldn't mess with. That one sentence sent a chill down my spine. What do you mean, people involved? He didn't answer. He just shook his head and left, slamming the door behind him. That was when I realized this wasn't just about personal betrayal anymore. There was something deeper, darker, hidden beneath all the lies. Over the next few days, things went from bad to worse. My job put me on temporary leave. My colleagues stopped replying to messages. Brands that had once collaborated with me quietly deleted our posts. I was being erased digitally and socially. But the real blow came when Nadia called again, her tone shaky. Maya, you need to see this. She sent me a link. My heart sank as I opened it. Someone had leaked private voice notes, edited clips, and half-truths to make me look like the manipulator. They twisted my confessions into a narrative that painted me as unstable, vindictive, and attention-hungry. It wasn't just exposure, it was retaliation. By evening, the hashtags had flipped. The same crowd that once defended me now mocked me. My DMs filled with cruel jokes, fake sympathy, and even threats. I tried to report, delete, explain, but the internet moves faster than truth. One moment that still burns in my memory, I went live on my social media, trembling, trying to explain my side. Please, I said, you're only seeing what they want you to see. The truth isn't this. But before I could finish, the comments exploded. She's lying again. She looks guilty. Crocodile tears. I ended the live midway, tears blurring my screen. The silence afterward was suffocating. That night, Nadia showed up at my apartment with food and blankets. She sat beside me, rubbing my back as I cried. You're not alone, she whispered. But I knew I was. Not because she wasn't there, but because the world had already decided what version of me it wanted to believe. Still, a part of me refused to give up. The fire that once pushed me to expose the truth began to burn differently now, quieter, sharper. If they wanted to destroy me, I would rebuild from the ashes. I started gathering everything, proof, messages, timelines. Not for the internet this time, but for myself. To remember that I wasn't crazy, that I didn't imagine the things I endured. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, the noise faded. People moved on to the next scandal, the next trending outrage. But my name still lingered in whispers. One afternoon, as I walked through the park, trying to clear my head, a little girl ran past me chasing a balloon. She tripped, and I instinctively caught her before she fell. Her mother smiled. "Thank you." That tiny moment, so normal, so human, reminded me that I still existed outside the noise. That my story didn't have to end with shame. It could evolve into something else. And maybe, just maybe, exposure wasn't meant to destroy me. It was meant to strip away everything fake until all that was left was the real me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over, because the people who had twisted the truth weren't done yet. And neither was I. The next morning, I woke to silence, not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that breathes peace into chaos. The notifications that once flooded my phone had slowed to a trickle. The world had moved on. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't rush to check my phone. Sunlight spilled through the half-drawn curtains, painting the floor in soft gold. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, realizing how long it had been since I'd felt rested. The air felt cleaner, lighter, as if the universe had finally stopped holding its breath. I made tea, not out of habit, but choice. The aroma filled the kitchen, wrapping me in a warmth I hadn't allowed myself to feel in so long. I stood by the window, watching the city come alive below, the hum of life, people moving forward, unaware of the storms that had raged in my little world. And in that simple moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't victory. It wasn't closure. It was freedom, the quiet kind that comes not from proving others wrong, but from finally releasing the need to. For weeks, I had lived chained to screens, fighting to be understood. Now, I was learning the strange beauty of being misunderstood and still choosing peace. Later that day, I went for a walk. No disguise, no fear of whispers, no weight pressing down on my shoulders. The autumn wind brushed against my face, carrying the scent of rain and dry leaves. I passed by the cafe where I'd once hidden, scrolling endlessly, reading every hateful comment. This time, I didn't look inside. I kept walking. Halfway down the street, I heard someone call my name. Maya. I turned to see a familiar face, Rida, one of my old college friends. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if approaching me was the right thing. The last time we spoke, I was in the middle of the chaos, raw and defensive. "I wasn't sure it was you," she said, smiling nervously. "You look different. Peaceful, maybe?" I laughed softly. "That's a first." She handed me a takeaway cup. "Coffee. Thought you might need it." As we sat on a nearby bench, the conversation flowed easily, surprisingly so. She didn't ask about the scandal, the video, or the hate. Instead, she talked about life, about her work, her little brother, the trip she was planning. For a while, I forgot to brace myself for judgment. Then, she said something that stayed with me. "You know, I saw everything online," she began cautiously, "but I didn't want to text. I figured everyone else was already throwing opinions at you. I just wanted to wait until it felt safe to talk like friends again." I looked at her, touched by the honesty. "Thank you for waiting." She smiled. "Sometimes silence is the kindest thing we can give." That sentence echoed in my head long after we parted ways. Silence. I used to hate it. It used to mean guilt, avoidance, pain. But now it was something else, a space to rebuild, to breathe, to simply be. Over the next few days, I began reclaiming little pieces of myself. I cleaned my apartment, deleting old photos and messages that once tethered me to pain. I cooked meals again, played music while cleaning, and started journaling, not to post, but to heal. In one entry, I wrote, I used to think freedom meant being seen, but maybe real freedom is the courage to exist even when no one is watching. One evening, Nadia dropped by with her usual energy, arms full of groceries. You're glowing, she teased, unpacking vegetables onto the counter. Should I be jealous or proud? Neither. I grinned. Just free. She arched an eyebrow. Big word. Are we talking free, as in no regrets, or free as in I finally deleted Twitter? Both. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. It felt good, genuinely good, to laugh without bitterness clinging to every breath. Later, as we ate dinner on the balcony, Nadia got quiet. I watched you break, Maya, but I also watched you rebuild. That takes strength. Her words warmed me more than the food. I didn't rebuild. I said softly, I just stopped fighting myself. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded, as if finally understanding something she hadn't before. After she left, I sat under the fading light, watching the sky turn shades of orange and violet. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message of hate. It was an email from a small online magazine. They wanted to publish an article I'd written weeks ago, an essay about resilience written before the storm. I almost didn't believe it. The editor's note read, Your voice carries both vulnerability and strength. We'd love to share it with our readers. Tears filled my eyes, not because it was success, but because it was recognition, the right kind, earned quietly without noise. That night, I lay in bed and whispered a simple truth to myself. I'm not who I was before this. And that's okay. The following week, I decided to travel. Not far, just to the coast. A place where no one knew me, where the ocean didn't care about my name or reputation. The first time I stood on that shore, wind tangling my hair, waves crashing against the rocks, I felt something powerful, like the universe reminding me that life moves endlessly forward, no matter who tries to stop it. I rented a small cabin near the sea. Mornings were slow, quiet. Evenings were painted with salt air and the sound of gulls. I'd walk barefoot along the wet sand, leaving footprints that vanished as waves touched them. Gentle proof that everything, even the deepest scars, eventually fades. One night, I met an old man who ran a tiny bookstore by the pier. He had kind eyes and a smile that carried a lifetime of stories. I wandered inside, drawn by the smell of paper and sea salt. Looking for something specific, he asked. Maybe peace, I said half-jokingly. He chuckled. You won't find that on any shelf, dear. But books do make the search easier. He handed me a worn copy of The Alchemist. Take it, he insisted. It's about finding treasures in places you least expect. That night, sitting by the window, I read until the pages blurred. And somewhere between those words, I found pieces of myself mirrored back. The dreamer, the fighter, the survivor. Days turned into weeks, and I began writing again. Not to prove, not to defend, just to express. My words flowed like the tide, honest and unfiltered. The story I thought had ended was only changing shape. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes still carried the shadows of pain. Yes, but they also glowed with something new, freedom. Freedom wasn't the absence of fear. It was the decision to keep walking despite it. One morning, I received a message from a young girl named Aisha. She had stumbled upon my old posts and somehow found my email. Her message read, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted to say thank you. Your story made me feel less alone. I was scared to speak up about what happened to me, but seeing how strong you were, I think I'm ready now. I stared at the screen, tears spilling freely. That single message made every sleepless night, every heartbreak, every battle worth it. I wrote back, You don't have to be fearless, Aisha. Just honest. That's where freedom begins. That day, I realized something powerful. Real freedom isn't found in forgetting what hurt you, but in transforming it into something that helps others heal. The next time I visited the bookstore, the old man asked, "So, did you find peace?" I smiled. "Not yet, but I found purpose. And maybe that's the same thing." He laughed softly. "Then you've already won." As I walked back along the pier, the wind carried the scent of salt and hope. I closed my eyes, letting it wash over me. For so long, I had lived trying to control how the world saw me. Now, I didn't need to. I didn't need validation, approval, or applause. I just needed to live, truthfully, quietly, freely. The sky above was streaked with pink and gold. Somewhere, a ship horn echoed, and I thought of all the versions of me that had existed, the broken one, the angry one, the lost one, and silently thanked them for surviving long enough to become this one. I was no longer running from the past. I was walking toward the future, barefoot, unafraid, and finally free. And for the first time, freedom didn't taste like revenge or escape. It tasted like peace, like home. When I look back now, I realize that everything I thought was meant to break me was quietly shaping me. The sleepless nights, the humiliation, the betrayal, they were chiseling away the parts of me that needed to go. I used to think strength came from never falling apart. But real strength, I've learned, comes from rebuilding yourself with trembling hands and a heart that still dares to love after being hurt. The storm that once terrified me now feels like a teacher. It stripped away my pride, my illusions, even my desperate need to please people who would never be satisfied. What remained was something raw, but real, me, the woman who found courage in chaos and light in loss. Sometimes, I still catch myself wondering what my cousin thinks now, whether she realizes how her demand for exposure became my turning point. I don't hate her anymore. In a strange way, I thank her, because without her manipulation, I would have kept shrinking myself just to be accepted. She may have tried to use me, but she ended up setting me free. Now, I live slower. I savor quiet mornings, honest laughter, and the comfort of my own company. I've stopped chasing validation and started choosing peace. My business didn't vanish. It evolved. Real clients found me through word of mouth, drawn not by social media noise, but by the authenticity behind every dish I make. And every time I plate a meal now, it's not about perfection. It's about love. I've also learned that forgiveness isn't about letting others off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the weight of bitterness. I used to think revenge meant getting even. But now, I understand that the sweetest revenge is simply living well with joy so loud it drowns out the echoes of the past. Some nights, I still revisit that wedding in my mind, the chaos, the whispers, the exhaustion. And then I smile, because that day didn't destroy me. It awakened me. It showed me exactly who I was and who I never wanted to be again. If you've ever been taken advantage of, betrayed, or belittled, I want you to know this. You are not what they said you were. You are what you decide to become after the dust settles. And when that moment of peace finally arrives, when you breathe without pain, when your heart beats without fear, that, my friend, is the taste of real freedom. Not revenge, not victory, just peace, pure and earned.